Hi there, welcome to the fourth episode of our series Peeping into Criticism. This video will try to introduce you to the most known, discussed, the one which is resurfacing today, kind of a intellectual position and literary theory titled Formalism. Russian formalism originated in the early 20th century with Okoyas and Moscow Linguistic Circle, the two schools which later merged into what we call formalism or Russian formalism. And these names are very familiar to us if we are literature lovers: Viktor Shklovsky, Roman Jakobson and Boris Eichenbaum, who can be considered as the pioneers of Russian formalism. Now, Russian formalism influenced American and British schools of studies, and I.A. Richards, then T.S. Eliot, William Emerson, Beardsley, Wimsatt, Cleanth Brooks, J.C. Ransom, all of these people, all of these critics, many of them teachers and poets, were highly influenced by the tradition of Russian formalism, which actually led to a break with the traditional way in which criticism was being done and led to what later they were called or titled as new critiques and the formation of the school called new criticism. Formalism was a break with the pattern in which criticism was being done in those days, in the sense that formalism or formalists said that criticism should focus more on the text and not on the history or biographical details, the context, and whatever that goes into the making of the poem. And that is where formalism broke with the traditional way of criticism, which gave a lot of influence to the person behind the text. For instance, if it's a poem, the poet, the background of the poet, the bio of the poet, the background of the poem, the context in which the poem was written, the historical context, the sociological context, but all these were considered as irrelevant by the formalists, by the new critiques too. And they said, if you want to read a text, if you want to read the poem, then concentrate on the poem and not on what goes into the making of the poem. So on such lines, they gave importance to images, to symbols, to paradox, irony, and all that goes into the making of a poem. And it's from Russian formalists that we got the idea of literariness. And literariness is that which makes a text a literary text, that which actually goes into the techniques of making a text a literary text as differentiated from a non-literary text. So formalists believe that any attempt to separate form and content of a text is fallacious. And with new criticism, we entered into a literary tradition which was more empirical, which can be considered to be scientific and sometimes even psychological, psychoanalytic to some extent, wherein they focused on the text, analyzed images, rhythm, meter, puns, paradox, irony, and all that goes in the making of a text. And then something else was also emphasized upon, which later came to be called as defamiliarization or estrangement. Now, in very short and simple terms, defamiliarization is that particular tendency or that particular technique which is to be used by the author so as to make whatever that is familiar to the reader unfamiliar. Now, formalists believe that once you break the habit of something being familiar to you, or we as readers, we get habituated to certain things which we expect from a text, or how a text is going to be, or what is going to be the next, or how a text will be. So once you break the habit, once you make the familiar unfamiliar, the text will be presented in such a manner which can be more aesthetically and criticized, or which can be poetically approached, wherein poetics can be approached in a more linguistic sense rather than a personal reading of a text. So this is something else which formalists contributed to literature, which is a technique of defamiliarization. Also, narratology borrowed a lot from Russian formalism, especially the concept of fabulae and sujet, the story and how the story is narrated, or the event and how the event becomes the tale. So that is also something which we borrowed from Russian formalists. Now, I.A. Richards experimented with the formalist techniques, or which later became the new criticism, by giving short excerpts from longer poems, or by giving poems without titles or names of the poets to his students and then ask them to criticize the text. Now, the result was quite atrocious in some sense, because the students could not really appreciate certain texts which were supposed to be the best of the texts or best poems till date. So the close reading of a text, that is departing from the details in the older way of giving importance to history, biography, etc., will give you something which is will give you a text which is defamiliarized from its habituated environment, and that will lead to a more open criticism, and that will help in literary criticism. So that was the argument which was put forward by the new critiques. Now, another important contribution by Wimsatt and Beardsley was the intentional fallacy and the affective fallacy, wherein they said it is quite fallacious to judge a text on the basis of the intention of the author in writing the text, and the effect of a text upon the reading community. So that was again another important move, or an idea which was put forward by the new critics. Now, the dogmatic, empirical nature of new criticism was soon refuted by other political, cultural theories like post-structuralism, and then new critiques were almost forgotten. But even today, universities still recommend practical criticism, new criticism of texts, so that students develop a critical eye on the text, so that you don't really forget the focus of a poem by giving too much importance to what went into the making of a poem. So I hope this video helps in taking a quick peep into what really went into or what really is about formalism.